The story of Julius Caesar begins not with an empire, but with a city that would one day dominate the known world, Rome. In 100 BC, the Roman Republic was a sprawling, chaotic, and ambitious state. Power was fragmented, held by a small elite of senators and aristocrats who jealously guarded their privileges. Into this world was born Gaius Julius Caesar, a man destined to change the course of history. From the start, Caesar's life was entwined with both privilege and danger. His family, the Iuli, claimed a lineage that traced back to Venus herself, a detail that would later bolster his aura of destiny. Yet, they were not among the wealthiest or most influential of Roman families. Young Caesar had to fight, charm, and outmaneuver to secure his place in a fiercely competitive society. As a youth, Caesar was known for his energy, ambition, and charm. He was educated in rhetoric, Greek literature, and Roman law, and quickly developed a reputation for eloquence that could sway both crowds and the powerful men of the Senate. Yet, his early political career was fraught with danger. Rome, during this period, was a city of political violence, shifting alliances, and social unrest. Ambitious politicians used bribery, intimidation, and outright violence to gain office. Caesar himself was kidnapped by pirates while traveling across the Aegean Sea. Instead of fearing death, he laughed at his captors, insisting they had undervalued his ransom. Once released, he gathered a small fleet, pursued the pirates, captured them, and executed them, a bold move that would foreshadow his audacity as a leader. Caesar's rise was accelerated by his alliances, particularly the political arrangement later known as the First Triumvirate. This informal pact brought together three of Rome's most powerful figures: Caesar, Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome, and Pompey, a celebrated general. Each had ambitions that could not be realized alone. Crassus sought military glory, Pompey sought the Senate's approval for his conquests, and Caesar sought political power and public favor. By combining their influence, money, and armies, they manipulated the Republic's machinery to their mutual benefit. Even as Caesar advanced politically, he never abandoned his military ambitions. In 58 BC, he was appointed governor of the province of Gaul, a vast region stretching from modern France to Belgium. Here, Caesar would demonstrate both his genius as a general and his ruthlessness as a conqueror. Over the course of 8 years, he waged a series of campaigns that brought Gaul firmly under Roman control. The Gallic Wars, as they became known, were a brutal and relentless series of battles. Caesar's forces faced fierce resistance from Gallic tribes such as the Helvetii, the Belgae, and the fierce chieftain Vercingetorix of the Arverni. Yet Caesar's combination of strategy, speed, and psychological warfare enabled him to defeat opponents who often outnumbered his forces. One of Caesar's most famous feats was the siege of Alesia in 52 BC, where he trapped Vercingetorix and his army on a fortified hill. Using an extraordinary combination of walls, ditches, and fortifications, Caesar created a double siege system, one to keep the Gauls in, another to defend against relief forces from outside. After weeks of relentless attacks and counterattacks, the Gauls surrendered. Vercingetorix was captured and paraded in Rome, a symbol of Caesar's growing power and the might of the Republic. But military victory alone could not secure Caesar's position. Rome's political landscape was treacherous. Senators feared his ambition, while Pompey, once an ally, began to view him as a threat. The First Triumvirate, held together by mutual benefit, had begun to unravel following the death of Crassus in 53 BC. Caesar's political and military influence now rivaled that of Pompey, and tensions escalated. In 49 BC, Caesar faced a choice that would change history: obey the Senate's order to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen, or defy the Republic and cross the Rubicon River with his legions effectively declaring war. He chose the latter. The phrase "crossing the Rubicon" has become synonymous with irreversible decisions. But for Caesar, it was a gamble that set the stage for civil war. Marching into Italy, Caesar faced Pompey's forces in a conflict that would engulf the Republic. He moved quickly, capturing key cities, forcing Pompey to flee to Greece. The ensuing war saw a series of decisive campaigns, including the famous Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC. Outnumbered, Pompey's forces were outmaneuvered by Caesar's disciplined legions. The victory cemented Caesar's dominance, yet the cost was immense. Rome had been plunged into a conflict that pitted Romans against Romans, and the Republic's institutions would never fully recover. After defeating Pompey, Caesar pursued him to Egypt. where the young Ptolemaic dynasty was embroiled in its own internal struggles. Here, Caesar's life intersected with one of history's most famous women, Cleopatra VII. Through a combination of political savvy, romance, and military support, Caesar helped Cleopatra secure her throne. Their alliance produced a son, Caesarion, though the boy's fate would be tragic in the turbulent years that followed. Caesar's time in Egypt demonstrated not only his military skill but also his understanding of diplomacy and personal influence. Returning to Rome, Caesar faced the challenge of consolidating power in a republic wary of monarchy. He implemented sweeping reforms, restructuring the calendar into the Julian calendar, centralizing the bureaucracy, providing land for veterans, and addressing the debts of ordinary citizens. His popularity among the Roman populace soared, but envy and fear among the Senate grew. Many saw him as a tyrant in the making, a man willing to dismantle centuries of republican governance. In 44 BC, Caesar reached the apex of his power, declared dictator perpetuo dictator for life. His enemies, fearing the end of the republic and the rise of monarchy, conspired against him. On the Ides of March, 15th of March 44 BC, Caesar was assassinated in the Senate. Brutus, Cassius, and more than 60 co-conspirators stabbed him to death, believing they were saving the republic. Yet rather than restoring the old order, Caesar's assassination plunged Rome into further chaos and civil war, setting the stage for the rise of the Roman Empire under his adopted heir, Octavian, later known as Augustus. Caesar's legacy is vast. He was a master of strategy, a brilliant orator, and a man whose ambition reshaped Rome forever. He left behind reforms that would influence governance for centuries and set a precedent for strong, centralized leadership. Yet, his life was also a cautionary tale of ambition and the fragile balance between power and the consent of the governed. Caesar's story reminds us that history is often shaped by the daring choices of individuals, and the consequences of those choices echo across time, and this is just the beginning. Caesar's life, his military campaigns, his political maneuvers, and his assassination offer a window into the world of a republic in turmoil. A city on the brink of empire, and a man who dared to cross every boundary in pursuit of destiny. After the assassination of Julius Caesar, Rome was thrown into chaos. The city, which had once been the heart of a republic, became a battlefield of rival factions, each claiming to act in the name of the people. The Senate, which had orchestrated Caesar's murder, expected to restore the old republican order, but the power vacuum they created invited a new wave of ambition and violence. In the months following Caesar's death, Antony, Caesar's loyal general, and Octavian, his adopted heir and grandnephew, emerged as the central figures in the struggle for control. Mark Antony, a seasoned military commander and politician, moved quickly to assert influence. He delivered one of the most famous speeches in history at Caesar's funeral, turning public sentiment against the conspirators. His words ignited anger among the populace, and riots broke out in the streets of Rome. Statues of Caesar were toppled, his enemies were hunted down, and the city teetered on the edge of complete disorder. Antony's skill lay not only in battle, but in understanding the power of emotion and propaganda. He knew how to channel the fury of the people into political leverage, a tactic that would shape Roman politics for years to come. Octavian, on the other hand, was young, only 19, and inexperienced in the ways of Roman politics. Yet he possessed a unique combination of intelligence, determination, and the legal authority as Caesar's heir. With the support of loyal veterans and careful alliances, he began consolidating power in the western provinces of the Republic. Over time, Octavian's careful maneuvering allowed him to position himself as a legitimate successor to Caesar's vision, even while Antony wielded the raw force of military might in the east. The tension between Antony and Octavian eventually led to the formation of the Second Triumvirate in 43 BC. This alliance, though temporary and fraught with distrust, allowed them to pursue Caesar's killers with ruthless efficiency. Brutus and Cassius, the leaders of the assassination plot, fled to the eastern provinces, gathering forces to challenge the triumvirs. Their final confrontation came at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. Octavian and Antony's legions, well-trained and disciplined, clashed with Brutus and Cassius in a brutal two-day engagement. Despite initial successes by the assassins, the tide turned in favor of the triumvirs. Both Brutus and Cassius committed suicide rather than face capture, ending the hopes of restoring the Republic through violence. With Caesar's assassins eliminated, Octavian and Antony divided the Roman world between them. Antony took the eastern provinces, including Egypt, while Octavian controlled the west, including Italy and Rome itself. However, this uneasy division would not last. Antony's relationship with Cleopatra in Egypt, both romantic and political, increasingly alienated him from Rome. He relied heavily on Egyptian resources to fund his armies and reward his supporters, a move that fueled suspicion among Roman senators and citizens. Octavian, seizing on this opportunity, portrayed Antony as a traitor to Rome, seduced by a foreign queen and willing to compromise the city's honor for personal gain. Tension escalated into open conflict. The stage was set for the final showdown between two of the most powerful men in Roman history. The decisive confrontation came at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Antony and Cleopatra's forces, though numerically strong, were strategically outmaneuvered by Octavian's fleet under the command of Agrippa. Using superior tactics and discipline, Octavian's forces destroyed much of Antony's navy, forcing the lovers to flee back to Egypt. In the aftermath, Antony and Cleopatra would take their own lives, leaving Octavian as the unchallenged ruler of Rome. By 27 BC, Octavian had consolidated power to an extent unprecedented in Roman history. While maintaining the outward appearance of republican institutions, the Senate, magistracies, and assemblies, he held supreme authority, effectively ending the Roman Republic and ushering in the era of the Roman Empire. In recognition of his accomplishments, the Senate bestowed upon him the title Augustus, meaning the revered one. Under Augustus, Rome would enter a period of relative peace and stability known as the Pax Romana, a time when the foundations laid by Caesar's ambition could bear the full weight of empire. Caesar's reforms, military campaigns, and centralization of power were not forgotten. They became the blueprint for the governance of the empire. Augustus himself frequently invoked Caesar's name, presenting himself as the heir to Caesar's vision rather than as a usurper. The Julian family, Caesar's lineage, was celebrated, and his image appeared on coins, public monuments, and in literature. In this way, Caesar's legacy endured, not only in the structure of the empire but in the cultural memory of Rome itself. Beyond politics and military conquest, Julius Caesar also left an indelible mark on Roman society and administration. His reforms were far-reaching. He restructured the calendar, creating the Julian calendar that would remain in use in various forms for over 16 centuries. He reformed debt laws, redistributed land to veterans and the poor, and took steps to integrate Rome's growing territories into a more coherent administrative system. By professionalizing the bureaucracy and standardizing procedures, Caesar laid the groundwork for the empire's governance, demonstrating that military genius must be paired with civil organization to create lasting power. But it was Caesar's writings that offer perhaps the clearest window into his mind. His commentaries on the Gallic Wars and the Civil War are not merely historical records. They are carefully crafted works of propaganda, designed to present Caesar as a competent, decisive, and heroic figure. Through them, he communicated directly with the Roman people, bypassing the Senate and elite opposition. His mastery of language and narrative ensured that his perspective would dominate the historical record for centuries. Despite his brilliance, Caesar's life was not without controversy. He was ruthless in war, often showing little mercy to defeated enemies. Cities that resisted his campaigns were sacked, and entire populations were enslaved or executed. Yet, his vision for Rome extended beyond conquest. He sought to bring stability to a republic weakened by internal strife and centuries of expansion. His ambition was both personal and civic, a desire to secure his legacy while reforming the state to endure. The story of Julius Caesar is ultimately a story of extremes. It is a tale of ambition and vision, courage and calculation, brilliance and brutality. It is the story of a man who crossed every boundary, challenged every convention, and left the world irrevocably changed. Rome under Caesar was a city in transformation, a republic on the brink of empire, and a society where one man's actions could alter the course of history forever. Even in death, Caesar's presence loomed large. His assassination did not restore the republic as the conspirators had hoped. Instead, it accelerated Rome's transformation into an imperial state. Through Octavian and the subsequent emperors, the world that Caesar had helped shape would endure for centuries, spreading Roman law, culture, and military organization across the Mediterranean and beyond. And while the streets of Rome would eventually echo with the footfalls of emperors, generals, and senators. It was the audacity of Julius Caesar, the man who dared to defy the Republic and redefine power, that ensured his name would never be forgotten. Caesar's life, his campaigns, his political maneuvers, and his ultimate assassination serve as a testament to the complexities of leadership, ambition, and the unpredictable forces of history. With Octavian firmly in control of Rome, the world that Julius Caesar had helped shape began to evolve in ways he had only partially envisioned. Though Caesar did not live to see the empire fully realized, his reforms and strategies laid the foundation for centuries of Roman dominance. The consolidation of power in the hands of a single ruler, the reorganization of the provinces, and the professionalization of the army were all direct consequences of his ambition and vision. These changes transformed Rome from a city-state racked by internal conflict into a centralized empire capable of projecting power across the Mediterranean and beyond. One of Caesar's most enduring legacies was his military genius. He had not only conquered vast territories, but had done so with unprecedented efficiency and innovation. His campaigns in Gaul, modern-day France and Belgium, showcased his ability to adapt to different terrains, cultures, and forms of resistance. Caesar's forces were disciplined yet flexible, capable of constructing fortifications overnight, crossing rivers with ingenuity, and executing maneuvers that seemed impossible to his adversaries. His writings, particularly Commentary de Bello Gallico, reveal both his strategic acumen and his careful attention to logistics, morale, and intelligence. Generals for centuries would study Caesar's methods as models of effective military leadership. However, Caesar's influence extended beyond the battlefield. His political reforms addressed structural weaknesses in the Roman Republic that had long hindered its stability. By centralizing authority, he reduced the ability of powerful senators to block decisions that benefited the state. By redistributing land and providing for veterans, he sought to maintain loyalty among the military while also stabilizing the urban population. He restructured the tax system to increase efficiency and reduce corruption, thereby strengthening Rome's financial foundations. These administrative innovations demonstrated Caesar's understanding that lasting power required more than military conquest. It required governance and the ability to implement lasting systems. Yet, these changes were double-edged. By concentrating power in the hands of a single individual, Caesar undermined the very republican ideals he claimed to protect. The Senate, once the heart of Roman political life, was increasingly marginalized. Political opposition was stifled, and public debate, while not entirely silenced, became constrained by the dominance of Caesar's authority. This shift generated resentment among traditionalists and ultimately led to his assassination. In the broader context of Roman history, Caesar's life illustrates the tension between personal ambition and institutional stability, a theme that resonates across the centuries. The cultural impact of Julius Caesar was also profound. He was a master of propaganda, carefully shaping his image through public works, coins, and literature. His triumphs were celebrated with elaborate ceremonies, reinforcing his status as both a military and civic leader. Public games, theater, and festivals under his direction were designed not only to entertain, but to solidify loyalty and project an image of magnanimity and strength. Through these efforts, Caesar cultivated an almost mythic persona, ensuring that his memory would endure far beyond his lifetime. Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, while a dramatic and violent turning point, did not erase his influence. Instead, it created a historical narrative in which he became both a martyr and a cautionary figure. The conspirators, including Brutus and Cassius, hoped to restore the Republic by removing him, yet their actions precipitated civil wars that ultimately strengthened the path toward imperial rule. This irony underscores one of the central lessons of Caesar's life, that extraordinary individuals, by virtue of their actions and vision, can reshape institutions, but their legacies often take on a life of their own, beyond their control. Octavian's rise to power following Caesar's death also illustrates the enduring influence of Caesar's vision. By aligning himself with Caesar's memory and using it to legitimize his authority, Octavian secured the loyalty of veterans and the populace. He adopted many of Caesar's administrative reforms, extended his military strategies, and maintained the centralization of power that Caesar had begun. In doing so, Octavian, later Augustus, cemented a system of governance that would endure for centuries. The Pax Romana, often celebrated as a period of unprecedented stability, owes much to the foundation laid by Julius Caesar's ambition and reforms. Caesar's legacy also extends to the intellectual and cultural domains. Roman literature, philosophy, and political thought were all shaped by his life and actions. Writers like Cicero, although critical of Caesar's concentration of power, engaged deeply with the questions he raised about governance, leadership, and morality. Later historians, including Suetonius and Plutarch, ensured that Caesar's story was preserved in rich detail, blending historical fact with narrative flair to create a compelling portrait of one of history's most complex figures. Through these works, Caesar became not only a historical figure but also a symbol of ambition, genius, and the dangers of unchecked power. In addition to his direct contributions, Caesar's actions had profound implications for the structure of Roman society. By extending citizenship and integrating conquered peoples into the Roman system, he began a process of cultural assimilation that strengthened the empire. Provinces that had once been distant and loosely controlled became connected through infrastructure, law, and administrative oversight. Roads, aqueducts, and public buildings facilitated trade, communication, and military mobility, creating a more unified and resilient empire. These innovations demonstrated Caesar's understanding that empire building required both conquest and the ability to integrate diverse populations into a coherent system of governance. Even in military terms, Caesar's campaigns influenced future Roman and European warfare. His combination of disciplined legions, strategic fortifications, and rapid mobility set a standard for centuries. Commanders studied his use of engineering, reconnaissance, and psychological warfare, applying these lessons long after his death. The methods he developed for organizing armies, maintaining supply lines, and motivating troops became foundational principles for military education in both the Roman world and later European states. Moreover, Caesar's life and death had symbolic power that resonated across generations. He became a cautionary tale of the balance between personal ambition and collective governance. Leaders, historians, and philosophers have reflected on his life to understand the dynamics of power, the risks of concentration of authority, and the ways in which charisma and skill can transform societies. From Renaissance political thinkers to modern historians, Caesar's life serves as a lens through which the complexities of leadership and historical change can be studied and understood. Finally, Julius Caesar's story is a testament to the unpredictability of history. His rise was fueled by personal talent, opportunity, and the structural weaknesses of the Republic. His fall was precipitated by fear, envy, and the resistance of traditional institutions. And yet, through all of this, his influence endured, shaping Rome and leaving a legacy that extends into the modern era. From the political institutions of the empire to military strategies, cultural narratives, and the very calendar we use today, Caesar's imprint is unmistakable. After Caesar's assassination, Rome was plunged into chaos. The conspirators had hoped to restore the Republic, but instead, their actions ignited a series of civil wars that would ultimately transform Rome forever. Among the most significant figures to emerge from this turmoil were Mark Antony and Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir. Antony, a loyal supporter and general, sought to claim power through military strength and political alliances, while Octavian, shrewd and calculated, leveraged Caesar's legacy to gather support from the people and the army. Their struggle for control would define the final years of the Roman Republic. The tension between Antony and Octavian reached its peak in the famous conflict surrounding Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. Antony had aligned himself with her, both politically and romantically, creating a powerful but controversial alliance. Cleopatra's wealth and influence posed both an opportunity and a threat, as her involvement in Roman affairs alarmed senators and citizens alike. Octavian used this to his advantage, portraying Antony as a traitor to Rome who had been seduced by foreign power. The propaganda war was as fierce as any military campaign, with both sides seeking to shape public opinion and justify their actions. In 31 BC, the conflict culminated at the Battle of Actium, a decisive naval engagement off the western coast of Greece. Octavian's forces, expertly commanded by Agrippa, outmaneuvered Antony and Cleopatra's fleet. The battle ended in a catastrophic defeat for Antony and Cleopatra, who would both die by suicide shortly afterward. With their deaths, Octavian emerged as the uncontested ruler of Rome. This victory marked the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire, with Octavian, soon to be known as Augustus, as its first emperor. The transformation from republic to empire was not merely political. It represented a profound shift in Roman governance and society. Augustus maintained the outward forms of the Republic, keeping the Senate and other institutions intact, but real power rested firmly in his hands. This careful balance of tradition and authority helped legitimize his rule and stabilize Rome after decades of civil war. He implemented administrative reforms, reorganized the provinces, and established a standing army loyal to the emperor, rather than individual generals. In doing so, he built on Caesar's vision, while ensuring that the chaos that had plagued the late Republic would not repeat. Julius Caesar's shadow loomed large over Augustus' reign. Octavian drew upon Caesar's reforms, military strategies, and propaganda techniques to consolidate power. Monuments, coins, and literature celebrated the continuity between Caesar and Augustus, portraying the latter as the rightful heir who would bring peace and prosperity to Rome. This deliberate association ensured that Caesar's legacy endured, shaping the ideological foundation of the Roman Empire and influencing how future generations viewed leadership, ambition, and the relationship between ruler and state. The cultural and social impact of Caesar's life and death extended beyond Rome itself. His campaigns in Gaul had spread Roman influence across Europe, integrating diverse peoples into the Roman system. His policies toward citizenship, infrastructure, and provincial governance helped unify a vast territory under Roman control. The roads, bridges, and cities established during his campaigns facilitated trade, communication, and military mobility, creating a network that allowed Rome to maintain its dominance for centuries. In essence, Caesar's actions laid the groundwork for an empire that would endure far beyond his lifetime. Caesar's influence on Roman law and governance was equally significant. By centralizing authority and streamlining administrative processes, he made the state more efficient and capable of responding to challenges. His reforms of the calendar, the Julian calendar, standardized timekeeping across the empire, providing a system that would be used for over a millennium. These changes reflected his understanding that lasting power required both military prowess and effective administration, a lesson that resonates in governance even today. Education, literature, and rhetoric also benefited from Caesar's legacy. His writings inspired not only contemporary Romans, but also generations of leaders and scholars throughout history. Figures like Cicero engaged with Caesar's ideas critically, debating the implications of concentrated power and the role of individual ambition in public life. Later, during the Renaissance, humanists and political thinkers drew upon Caesar's life to explore questions of leadership, ethics, and the responsibilities of those who wield power. His story became a touchstone for understanding the complexities of governance, ambition, and historical change. Despite his military and political genius, Caesar's life also serves as a cautionary tale. His concentration of power, while effective in achieving immediate goals, provoked fear and resentment among his peers. The assassination of 44 BC illustrates the delicate balance between authority and legitimacy, demonstrating that even the most talented and ambitious individuals must navigate institutional constraints and public perception. This tension between personal ambition and collective governance remains a timeless theme. Explored in political theory, literature, and historical analysis for centuries, the aftermath of Caesar's death also highlights the unpredictable nature of history. The conspirators' failure to anticipate the public's reaction and the loyalty of the army to Caesar transformed their intended restoration of the Republic into a series of conflicts that ultimately strengthened the imperial system. History, in this sense, is shaped as much by perception, narrative, and human emotion as by strategy, policy, and military skill. Caesar's life exemplifies this interplay, showing how individual actions can resonate far beyond their immediate context. Caesar's cultural legacy endured not only through political institutions, but also through art, literature, and public memory. Sculptures, coins, and monuments immortalized his image, while writers and historians preserved his story for future generations. The blending of myth and history created a figure both human and larger than life, whose accomplishments and flaws could be studied, debated, and admired. From Roman poets to modern historians, the fascination with Caesar reflects a recognition of his extraordinary impact on the world and the enduring questions his life raises about leadership, power, and legacy. Furthermore, Caesar's campaigns had a lasting impact on the geography and demography of Europe. The integration of Gaul, Hispania, and other territories into the Roman system facilitated cultural exchange, economic development, and the spread of Roman law, language, and customs. This process of Romanization helped create a shared identity across diverse regions, strengthening the cohesion of the empire and influencing European development long after Caesar's death. His military and administrative strategies demonstrated a remarkable understanding of how conquest and governance must work hand in hand to achieve sustainable control. In military theory, Caesar's campaigns remain exemplary. His combination of disciplined infantry, mobile cavalry, and innovative siege techniques provided a model of versatility and adaptability. Commanders studied his use of engineering, fortifications, and psychological warfare, applying these principles to campaigns for centuries. The lessons of Gaul, Britain, and the civil wars illustrate the importance of leadership, planning, and the ability to respond to unexpected challenges, qualities that define successful military strategy across history. The story of Julius Caesar also underscores the power of narrative. Through his own writings, speeches, and public image, he shaped how contemporaries and later generations perceived his life and actions. His ability to communicate achievements, justify decisions, and influence public opinion demonstrates the importance of storytelling in political and military leadership. By controlling the narrative, Caesar ensured that his influence extended far beyond his immediate victories and reforms, leaving a legacy that would endure across centuries. Finally, Caesar's life invites reflection on the human dimensions of leadership. He was ambitious, strategic, charismatic, and ruthless, yet also capable of generosity, innovation, and vision. His successes were inseparable from his flaws, and his downfall was tied to both his extraordinary abilities and the reactions they provoked. Studying Caesar offers timeless lessons about the complexity of power, the responsibilities of leadership, and the delicate balance between personal ambition and the collective good. The aftermath of Julius Caesar's death reshaped the Roman world forever. Though the Republic's institutions survived in form, the reality of power had shifted irreversibly. Octavian, later Augustus, consolidated authority, establishing the Principate, the foundation of the Roman Empire. In doing so, he ensured that Caesar's vision of a unified, strong Rome would endure, even if it came under a different system of rule. Caesar's military genius, administrative reforms, and political foresight had laid the groundwork for an empire that would dominate the Mediterranean and Europe for centuries. One of Caesar's most enduring legacies was the transformation of Roman governance. By centralizing authority, streamlining bureaucracies, and professionalizing the army, he created a system capable of managing an empire far larger than the old city-state model could sustain. Augustus built upon these foundations. But the innovations Caesar introduced, from the Julian calendar to the expansion of citizenship rights, remained integral to the administration of the Roman world. Caesar's reforms showed that effective leadership requires not just ambition, but also vision, organization, and adaptability. Culturally, Caesar's influence permeated Roman life. Literature, rhetoric, and public monuments celebrated his achievements and reinforced his image as both a brilliant general and a transformative statesman. Writers like Cicero critiqued him, while poets and historians immortalized his victories. The combination of myth, propaganda, and genuine accomplishment ensured that Caesar's name would resonate far beyond his lifetime. His story became a blueprint for power, ambition, and the complexities of leadership, inspiring figures from Napoleon to modern political leaders. The impact of Caesar's conquests extended to the geography and peoples of Europe. His campaigns in Gaul integrated vast territories into the Roman system, spreading Roman law, language, infrastructure, and culture. Cities were founded, roads constructed, and trade networks expanded, fostering connectivity and economic growth across the continent. Caesar's military strategy emphasized not just conquest, but also governance and integration, creating a legacy that shaped European development for centuries. His approach illustrated that the success of an empire relies as much on administration and diplomacy as on battlefield victories. Julius Caesar also changed the way history was recorded. His own writings, particularly Commentary de Bello Gallico and Commentary de Bello Civili, set new standards for military and political reporting. Written in clear, direct Latin, these accounts combine tactical detail with persuasive narrative, providing insight into his thinking and leadership style. Future historians, military strategists, and scholars studied these texts, learning lessons about strategy, statecraft, and the human dimension of conflict. Caesar's words ensured that his perspective would survive, influencing generations long after his death. The shadow of Caesar's ambition, however, served as a warning as well as inspiration. His assassination revealed the dangers inherent in concentrated power, and the tension between personal ambition and institutional stability became a recurring theme in Roman and world history. The conspirators' failure demonstrated that even the most powerful individuals cannot control every consequence of their actions, and that the response of the public, the army, and political rivals can dramatically alter outcomes. Caesar's life illustrates the delicate balance between greatness and hubris, and the fragile nature of political authority. In art and literature, Caesar's life has inspired countless works. From Shakespeare's Julius Caesar to modern biographies and films, his story has been retold with variations, interpretations, and dramatizations. Each portrayal examines the interplay of power, loyalty, betrayal, and ambition, highlighting timeless themes that continue to resonate with audiences today. Through these cultural representations, Caesar remains not only a historical figure but also a symbol of leadership, courage, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. Caesar's military innovations also left an indelible mark. His emphasis on speed, flexibility, and adaptability in warfare influenced Roman military doctrine for generations. The integration of engineering, logistics, and psychological strategy allowed him to achieve victories even in the most challenging campaigns, such as the conquest of Gaul or the civil wars in Italy. Modern military historians still study his campaigns as models of leadership, planning, and innovation, demonstrating that the principles Caesar employed are applicable far beyond his own time. Perhaps the most profound lesson of Caesar's life is the enduring complexity of leadership. He combined intellect, charisma, tactical skill, and political acumen. Yet his extraordinary abilities also provoked fear, jealousy, and ultimately his assassination. His life and death show that leadership is never solely about personal ability. It is inseparable from context, relationships, and the perceptions of others. Caesar's experience reminds us that history is shaped by human choices, ambitions, and the interplay of power, making his story both timeless and instructive. The legacy of Julius Caesar extends beyond Rome. His reforms influenced legal systems, governance structures, and military practices throughout Europe and beyond. His vision of a unified, centrally governed state informed the development of empires that followed, and his example became a reference point for rulers and statesmen seeking to balance authority with stability. Caesar's name remains synonymous with ambition, leadership, and transformation, an enduring testament to the impact of one individual on the course of history. As we reflect on Julius Caesar's life, we see a man who changed the world through ambition, intelligence, and audacity. From his early years in the streets of Rome to the far-flung battlefields of Gaul, from the corridors of power in the Senate to the fateful Ides of March, Caesar's story is one of brilliance and peril, of vision and consequence. He shaped Rome, inspired generations, and left a legacy that continues to inform our understanding of power, leadership, and history itself. This is the story of Julius Caesar, a man whose life, victories, and tragic death reshaped the Roman world, laying the foundations for the empire that would dominate the Mediterranean for centuries. His name endures, a symbol of both the heights of human ambition and the fragility of power. From the streets of Rome to the pages of history, Caesar remains an eternal figure, reminding us that the past is never truly gone and that the actions of one person can echo through time. Step into the world of the past with Simple Historian, where history is made simple, cinematic, and engaging. Every video on this channel uncovers the empires, wars, and individuals that shaped our world, telling their stories with clarity, depth, and human insight. If you love history, subscribe, like, and share. Your support helps us bring more stories from the past to life, and every comment guides the next journey. Simple Historian, making history easy to understand.